1920 London. In the year 1920, London was a city caught between the old and the new. Mist clung to the narrow streets, and the sound of horse-drawn carriages blended with the distant hum of motor cars. Shivangi felt at home in this world of contrast. She lived in a grand house with her husband, Veer Singh, a successful businessman whose charm and intellect had won her heart years ago. For a time, their life seemed perfect. One day, a peculiar parcel arrived at their doorstep. The package had no return address, but the stamp indicated it had come from Rajasthan, the place of their heritage. When Veer unwrapped it, he found a beautiful, ornate locket inside. Its design was intricate, and like anything Shivangi had ever seen, with strange symbols etched into its surface. Veer, intrigued by its craftsmanship, decided to wear it immediately, unaware of the fate that awaited him. Within days, everything changed. Veer fell ill, but his symptoms were unlike any illness Shivangi had seen before. He became restless, often staring blankly into space as if listening to something only he could hear. At night, he would wake up drenched in sweat, muttering in languages he didn't know. Doctors came and went, offering various diagnoses. Some said it was a fever, others suggested a rare psychological disorder. Yet none could explain the rapid deterioration of his condition or the shadows that seemed to follow him around. As the days passed, Veer began to exhibit even stranger behaviors. His voice would change mid-sentence, fluctuating between his normal tone and a deeper, more sinister one. His eyes, usually so warm, grew cold and distant, and sometimes his pupils would dilate unnaturally, reflecting a darkness that was not his own. He would speak of things he had no way of knowing, recounting stories of the dead and describing places he had never been. One evening, as Shivangi sat beside his bed, Veer suddenly grabbed her hand, his grip tighter than ever before, his face twisted in agony, and his eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. "The locket," he whispered hoarsely, "it brought a curse upon us." Shivangi's heart pounded in her chest. The locket, the beautiful, mysterious gift. She had sensed something was off about it from the start, but she never imagined it could hold such malevolent power. She reached out to touch it, but as her fingers brushed against the metal, she felt a jolt, like an electric shock. The air grew cold, and a low, menacing laugh filled the room, coming from Veer's mouth, but not his voice. Desperate for answers, Shivangi remembered someone who might help, a man named Hai, an exorcist from Rajasthan. Hai was not only known for his abilities to combat dark forces but was also a man from Shivangi's past, someone she had once loved deeply. It was not easy to think of him now, but she had no choice. She sent a letter explaining everything, begging for his help. Within days, a response arrived. Hai agreed to come, but his letter carried a warning. "The curse is old and deep-rooted. Prepare for what lies ahead." When Hai arrived in London, he found Shivangi waiting anxiously at the train station. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the past resurfaced their shared memories. The paths they had once walked together, but the urgency of the situation quickly pushed those thoughts aside. Hai's face was stern, focused. He was here to confront the darkness that had taken hold of Veer. At the house, Hai felt the presence immediately. The air was heavy, almost suffocating. As he approached Veer, lying restrained on the bed, Hai noticed how the shadows in the corners seemed to stretch toward him, as if alive. Veer's body trembled, and his eyes opened slowly. But they were no longer his eyes, they were filled with rage, the pupils dark and deep like endless pits. Hai remained calm. "Who are you?" he asked, addressing the entity within Veer. "Why are you here?" Veer's lips curled into a cruel smile. "I am the one betrayed," he hissed, his voice distorted. "I am the one wronged, and I will not leave until my vengeance is fulfilled." Shivangi's face went pale. She had never heard such venom in her husband's voice. Hai began chanting in a low, rhythmic tone, invoking ancient mantras meant to drive out evil spirits. Veer's body convulsed, and a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the lamps. The locket round his neck seemed to glow with a malevolent light, pulsing like a heartbeat. "The locket is the key," Hai murmured. "It holds the spirit that possesses him. It must be removed." Shivangi nodded, moving forward. She reached out for the locket, but as her fingers closed around it, an invisible force flung her across the room. She hit the wall hard, pain shooting through her shoulder. I rushed to her side, helping her up. "Are you all right?" She nodded, grimacing. "Yes, but we have to destroy it." I knew they had to understand the curse's origin to break it. He spent hours poring over texts, letters, and manuscripts he had brought with him. The symbols on the locket began to make sense. They were ancient, older than any language still in use. They spoke of a wronged soul, a spirit bound to the object, seeking revenge for an ancient betrayal. As Hai continued his research, the pieces began to fall into place. The locket had once belonged to a woman named Mohini, a healer and mystic in Rajasthan who had been falsely accused of witchcraft by Veer's ancestors. Before she was executed, she cursed the family, vowing that her spirit would haunt their descendants until her wrongful death was avenged. The locket had somehow found its way back to Veer, awakening the spirit that had been dormant for decades. I knew then that the curse could not be lifted easily. The spirit of Mohini was powerful, filled with centuries of rage. They needed to perform a ritual at the very place where Mohini had been wronged, her resting place back in Rajasthan. Shivanji and Hai wasted no time. They prepared for a journey to Rajasthan, knowing it would be dangerous. They took Veer with them, his condition worsening by the day. On their arrival, they found Mohini's old home, now overgrown with weeds and nearly swallowed by the desert sands. I set up the ritual space, drawing protective symbols round them. As he began the ritual, the ground trembled, and a cold wind blew across the desert. Veer's body contorted, and the spirit within him screamed, "You cannot take me back." The shadows seemed to come alive, swirling around them like a black fog. Hai continued chanting, his voice unwavering, calling upon the ancient powers to help them. Suddenly, there was a deafening silence. The spirit, sensing its time was running out, made one last attempt to lash out. Mohini's ghostly form appeared, eyes filled with anger and sorrow. "I was wronged," she cried. "I seek justice." I spoke directly to the spirit. "Your pain is real, Mohini, and we acknowledge the wrong done to you. But Veer is not responsible for the sins of his ancestors. Release him and find peace." For a moment, the spirit hesitated. The fury in her eyes softened, and a tear rolled down her ethereal cheek. With a final, mournful wail, Mohini's form dissolved into the wind, and the locket fell from Veer's neck, its glow fading away. Veer collapsed, breathing heavily but alive, his eyes clearing. The curse had been lifted. As they stood in the desert, the first rays of dawn breaking on the horizon, Shivanji looked at Hai with gratitude. He had saved Veer, but in doing so, he had also brought closure to a past they had both tried to forget. They parted ways as friends, each knowing they had fulfilled a duty that went beyond their personal history. London felt lighter when they returned, the mist less oppressive, the shadows less threatening. But Shivanji knew they had witnessed something beyond the ordinary, a reminder of the unseen forces that still move in the spaces between light and dark, life and death. Please do subscribe and like this video.